So as you get to know me, you're going to find out that I enjoy telling stories. It is really weird to preach from here, by the way, because I can hear myself from the microphone and also from the echo on the walls, so it's very strange. But I like the sound of my own voice, so it works out very nicely. Sometimes I just talk and talk and talk to myself. So if you see that, it's normal. Just pretend it's normal. So anyway, I like to tell stories, and I have a lot of great stories. And part of the reason is I've lived all over the world, and one of the places that I've lived was Rome, Italy. And I lived there because Bishop Griffin at the time sent me to do my theological studies there, because he wanted to send me to a place where I blended in. So I was there with all the other 6'3" pasty white Italians that were running around Rome. And during my time in Rome, I actually got to travel. One of the great things about studying over there is to travel to other places where I don't blend in, where I am absolutely different from everybody else. And my second year, we ended up going to Ars, France. And Ars is the place where St. John Vianney, who is the only parish priest, the only diocesan priest to ever be canonized. That's not to say that we're not holy, it's just we're too busy working for you guys to get canonized. So that's what the problem is. And we went there and we had retreat there, and it was new. We spent New Year's Eve there in silence and meditation around St. John Vianney, and it was time to come home, and we took the train from Lyon down to a place called Chambord, France, where we were supposed to switch trains to go to Milan and finally back to Rome so that we could resume our studies. And we just had this little bit of a layover there, and you have to picture this. I had this big backpack on, and I was with 3 of my friends, and I had this Russian babushka hat that I had bought in Prague the year before. You know, one of those big fuzzy, I was going to bring it, but I couldn't find it since I packed it when I moved. But it's one of these flat top hats and with the big things over the ears. And we were there for just long enough to get a sandwich. And I bought this baguette sandwich. And if you've ever been to France, you know, they're like Subway sandwiches, but on steroids, you know. They're really, really, really good. And so I had that, and I had my little bag of pommes frites, which are potato chips, and I had my little Diet Coke, and we got onto the platform, and this train pulled up, and we were supposed to leave at 10, but this train pulled up at 9:50, and it said Milan on the thing. And I'm like, oh, look at this, the train's early. So I got on the train with my backpack and my Russian hat and my sandwich, and my buddies decided, they were smokers at the time, they decided to stand on the platform and smoke since we had 10 minutes to leave. And so I got all comfortable, and they're on the other side of the window, and I'm on the inside of the train, getting ready to just dig into this sandwich. I was looking so forward to it when the train started moving. The train started moving 10 minutes early, and my friends were out on the platform, and I was inside the train. And this is all they saw, was me and my babushka hat going by the window like this. And so I got up, and I left the baguette. I know, I can't believe I left food. I left the baguette. I left the chips, and I left the pop, and I grabbed my backpack, and I threw it out onto the platform. And then I looked at the platform, and I said, that's moving slow enough for me to do the same thing. And so I was about to jump when the conductor comes up, and he says, no, and he holds me back. So I left all my stuff on the platform. I left my friends, I left my backpack, I left everything but my Russian hat and my baguette sandwich. And the train was completely empty. And I said, well, when does this train stop next? And he says, not for 2.5 more hours. And I said, well, where are we going? And he says, I don't know. He says, I'm just here to take tickets. I'm not sure where we're at right now. He says, I just end up back here at the end of the day. I'm like, oh, great. So I sat down, and I was panicked about where I was going, and I didn't know where I was going to be in 2.5 hours. And I just sat there, and the only comfort that I had was that baguette sandwich. And this thing it was a feast now. It was my only comfort. And I dug into that thing, and I ate it, and it filled me up, and it made me feel better. And 2.5 hours later, we ended up in a place called Albertville, France. I was by myself. And I got off the train, and there are these beautiful mountains everywhere. In fact, the Olympics were there in the 80s, if you remember. And the mountains were very high, and they were snow-capped, and the sky was as blue as it could possibly be, and it was a beautiful, crisp day. And I knew that I had stepped off the train into heaven. And I called I got a hold of my friends on their cell phone, and they said, Wagner, get back here. And I said, no, you guys get on a train and come here. And they said, no, come back. And so I had to come back to reality. The most important part about that story, and I love that story, and I went back, and we ended up having to spend another night in France and things like that, which wasn't bad, and then we ended up going back to Rome the next day. But I had left everything behind. I had nothing on that train. I had nothing but that food. But it was that food on the journey that gave me the great comfort to know everything was going to be okay. And with every bite, I was more comforted on this journey. And at the end, when I stepped out onto the platform and I saw what I believe is the most beautiful place I've ever been, which is just like heaven on earth, I knew that I was going to be okay. And I made my arrangements and I came back. You see, our life journey is no different. We might have a lot of things, we might have a lot of money, we might have cars, we might have lots of friends, but in reality, all of it is going to be left back on the platform. And all of us, every single one of us, is on a journey to find that most beautiful place in the universe, which is heaven, which is total and absolute relationship with God, where we understand that we are going home, where we understand that in fact this is not our home, that in fact we look forward to something that is great and marvelous and glorious. And what He does for us, what God does for us, is He gives us food for the journey. Much like that sandwich was a comforting thing for me on that journey toward heaven, so the Eucharist is our bread that comes from heaven. And the beautiful part about the Eucharist is that while we are not home, while we are awaiting our arrival to where we most desire to be, that is at God's side and one with Him, He sends us the Eucharist so that we might not be alone, but that we might have that bread from heaven, that we might already experience here and now in this place heaven. You see, my dear friends, we do not have to wait to get off the train to experience heaven, because Jesus comes here for us every single Sunday on this altar and on all of the altars of the world, and we experience heaven on earth. That is why it is so important for Jesus to say, "I am the bread from heaven," because He is heaven. And it is in this place that heaven and earth meet. Because there is nothing in this world, there is nothing in this world that will satisfy our hunger and thirst the way that only Jesus can, that only He can in the bread of life, in the Eucharist. And it is the very foundation and basis of our faith. Lord knows I have tried to fill myself with all sorts of junk food, and I would wager that there are a lot of people in here that have done the same. And I can tell you that whenever I come back and fill myself with this Eucharist, whenever I come back and am able to encounter heaven on earth, to encounter Jesus in the bread of life, I am never hungry. Because here we work for food that never perishes. Here we work for the food that satisfies us. And here we understand that great love and unity that we hope for from the very center of our being. And you and I, who get to come here every week or go to any altar around the world, have the opportunity to experience this. And there is nothing that compares. The things of the world are like a bag of Doritos compared to the great steak and potatoes of the Eucharist. Why would you want anything else? Why would we want anything that doesn't satisfy us? And yet this world tries to constantly cram down our throat things that will only make us unhealthy, only separate us from God, only bring us farther from heaven. When right here in this place, you and I see our eternal home come to earth as that bread of life and that bread of heaven comes into our midst in the very presence of Jesus Christ Himself.